from my perspective, I just wanted to mention, let's see, share. I have my IMU, loosely mounted on my tractor, and I'm able to get the signal into my GUI, and I've been spending time working on what I sort of loosely call the operator console. And I'd previously been using Tinctor to visualize this data coming off of the tractor on my laptop, because it's, you can't see it in this sort of still frame, but this window over here, I've got, information statements scrolling up here quickly, and I couldn't always keep track of what was going on, and I had multiple launch files that I was starting here, and I'm sure there's more professional developers have better ways of doing it, but for me this just sort of worked. So I would have a launch file that would start this, the base sensors, and for me that was critical to say, hey, are the front wheels pointed straight, and some other sensors. And so this is at the moment what my sort of operator console looks like, and the IMU heading is here, and there's a place here for the rotational velocity. I've not actually tested it in the field yet because I ran into another problem that I'll explain here in a second, but the code for this is sitting out here on GIS, and as with a lot of things that I run into, I don't find many people who have shared much around this, so I just shared what I've done. And in the Tinctor world, in the ROS world, I've found no one. And maybe I should learn from that, nobody is doing this because it's not worth doing. So maybe there's something to learn there, but anyway.
Can you post the link to that page to the chat?
Yeah.
Again, it's one of those things where it's got about a 23-digit number to represent the link. So either somebody have to try to read that off the screen and type it in, or if it's just posted as a link, then somebody can just click on it.
I think it's in the Slack channel too.
But that doesn't tie it to the meeting video though. See, as I go back indexing videos, I realize that these things don't necessarily get tied together when somebody will say, oh, here's something I found, and they'll talk about it, but they won't actually post it on the screen. So anybody going back watching the video 2 years later has no idea what people were talking about. So it just makes it easier to tie this stuff together. So the next question is that where you posted this code, is that like on a real GitHub where now people are going to decide they want to get involved and they want to do pull requests on your code or anything, or is it just simply basically a display only page that you've got there?
Well, GIST is, I don't know what the legal standing is between GIST and GitHub. It's all the same people, I think. Right, so it's here.
So the options that people would have, can they, I assume, because you're posting comments, I suppose other people could post comments to it.
Yeah, I guess they could. I mean,
I need to post some code somewhere. It's just that I don't want to get into the thing like on GitHub where as soon as you do, then everybody decides they're going to fork it and make changes and say, here, you should update this. Or they say you will update this because you said you're going to support this. Well, no, I'm not saying I'm going to support it. I just want someone to put code that if people want to use it, they can, and if not, that's fine. So I'm just curious.
yeah, I mean, I just put this out here so it was in a public place so you guys could see it personally. I mean, it's not like a package I'm trying to promote. I mean, I could have put it in. This seemed to be a little bit easier to get to and a little bit easier to display than putting it in the Google Drive is the only reason I put it out there.
Once you put it in here, can you just click a button that says download it, or do you have to cut and paste if you want the code?
You can download the zip file.
Okay.
And I guess if you're smart enough to know how to use GitHub Desktop, there's something there about it as well.
Yeah, I have no idea what GitHub Desktop is. More stuff that I don't know about. I don't have the ambition to figure it out. So
Yeah, I'm not, nor do I. So,
but I should go through and update that ROS node that I wrote that takes in random data from whatever sensor and publishes that as an array. And then I said, okay, if you know which field is the heading, I can pull the heading off, and I put that code in to do the unwrapping of the heading so it doesn't bounce between 0 and 360. So I should clean that up so it's a little easier to use than post that somewhere so that people can use that if they choose to.
yeah, I just don't. I found putting stuff in the Google Drive was harder to have a conversation around it than putting it here. Is the only reason I put it here. I mean, and you're a better programmer than I am, so you'll understand, like, this window is generated by this class, and there's these def statements. One of them is this callback, and one of them is this update statement. And this update statement gives you a timer, and this timer is set to update every second. And with this Tinctor user interface, there's this whole, Ross has got this spin going on, and Tinctor has got a update going on, and I'm not going to explain it elegantly, but like I said, looking for people who have tried to integrate a GUI and ROS and Tinctor, I found crap examples. And, I kludged together a couple of examples, one from these guys and one from, I think this was from the construct, and put this together. So it's working for me. And for these command velocity updates, obviously command velocity is running at a heck of a lot faster than 1 second. So, I adjusted the timer, and so it updates faster. However, my problem statement at the moment, and it's unrelated to Tinctor, is for some reason when Angular Z changes, it's crashing ROS. And now I've got to debug what in the world is going on with that. So, I mean, and it's a hard crash. It's not like giving me an error message or anything. It just flat. I mean, I've gone through every log file in ROS logs and it just stops, hard stops.
So do both that Z and the X, they both say Pi Vero. Do both of those crash it or just the one?
Well, in this particular screen capture that I did, nothing has been published. I mean, I just happened to take this screen capture before anything had been published. That's why that says what it says.
I'm just curious if you were to comment out the code for the Angular Z, does everything run okay, or is it? I just wonder, is it unique to the Angular Z, or since the linear X probably is done the same way? I just wondered if both of those would have the same problem.
Yeah, in the debug process, I commented out both of these GUIs just to make sure it wasn't GUI related at all, and it still crashed. And it only crashed when Angular Z published a value. So I could move the joystick. And it may actually be, I haven't confirmed this 100%. It may be related to the Bluetooth joystick. I need to confirm that, but I plugged in a hardwired joystick on my tractor and it didn't seem to crash. So I think I have something that a hardware layer going on. So anyway, I was going back into my into the launch files and looking at like what's actually getting launched and what
So will it crash if you don't have the GUI running at all? Will it still crash, or is it the fact you've got the GUI and possibly your wireless joystick is what's causing it?
well, that's a good question.
It's something to try.
What I specifically commented out were these two windows. So this, I mean, this was running and this launched teleop. I mean, what specifically I commented out was these, you know, the commands that launched those two windows, and it still crashed. So, I mean, these windows, those windows, this was still running, and the launch teleop statement was still running, and that, you know, the launch teleop starts this drive teleop and command velocity box, and it points to JSO or JS0. And so I'm thinking it's a hardware thing as opposed to a GUI thing, but I got to figure that out. That's my problem statement at the moment. And I'm still in debug mode trying to, I had just started capturing some, like, capturing some stuff when I had to stop. But like I said, in the ROS log file, it's just going along, and then it just it just stops. There's no
What about
hey.
what about your screen where you started it from? Somewhere you went in and typed ROS launch, whatever, and that puts out, as it runs, that puts out messages. That's where I would expect to see an error show up. So that's something to look for next time. Next time it crashes, go back and look at that original screen. Yeah, like that kind of screen right there.
Yeah, I mean, and so this is, I mean, obviously you're just getting a little snippet of it. This is the screen where I would have started the very first launch file, and this is where all the informational statements are, flying by.
Yeah.
Um,
And that's what I would expect to see. If it crashes, I would expect to see something pop up there saying something was unhappy, therefore I'm shutting down. And then you can go back and you can just cut and paste that into a text file to look at later at that point.
Yeah, and literally what I have is like the last informational statement, and then it's not actually even hex code. It is like a series of zeros or something. It is just it's odd. It's just really odd. It just there's no statement that prints, but then when I open up the log file, anyway, I'll take a screenshot and post it. But it's an unusual crash. So that's where I'm at. I think that's about it. What's going on in my world?
Let's see if I can figure out how to do this here. Let me try share screen, screen one.
Oh, back to your GPS.
Can you see my chat window and my participant window? Here, I'll just drag them over here, get them out of the way.
What I see is the GPS reference physical.
Okay, that's what I want showing right now. So if I zoom in on that, so back in 2015 when they put this thing in, they just dug a hole and put this plastic casing in that has a plastic lid on the thing, and then inside it looks like it's filled with gravel. But this right in the center here, which this doesn't seem to want to. I don't know why that's out of focus. Anyway, it's just got a round rod that's like 3/4 inch in diameter. And according to the sheet that I have, it says it's 12 foot long. So they drove it 12 foot straight into the ground. Then they put this disc on. Let's see if I can pull up the next one. So there's got this disc they stamped into it. So the 2710B is the reference number. So they know in the world, they know where this one is. And then 2015 is simply when they put the thing in.
That's cool.
So that's what it looked like when they originally put the thing in. And then after, 6 years, now it looks like this. And I think what happened was they redid the road. So they ripped out the road completely and put in a new road, to calm the traffic. They put in, they tried to make it narrower in some spots and whatever. But I think what they did, their heavy equipment ran over this thing.
That didn't work out so well.
Yeah, broke the top off. It looks like it's actually pulled up because this is sticking up quite a ways and then got bent. And so I think I don't know how it got pulled up in the first place, but then it got bent, and the disc used to be way up here on the thing. If you can see my cursor right now, it used to be up here. So now the rod got pulled up a ways and the disc is pushed down, and it looks, there's some scratches on it. Can I zoom in on that? there's some scratches on the top here. So I think it's been hit with a lawnmower a few times. So I put, the last time I was over there, I put this, here, I probably got a better picture here. I can't really do, but back here is I put in one of those orange things like you mark your driveway with. So during the winter, you know where you know where to run your snow plow. So I stuck one of those in, so hopefully they'll quit hitting it with the lawnmower. And there's if you look at the thing, it says right on it, it says for more information or to report damage, write to this guy and tell him about it. So I'll probably go ahead and do that. So I'll tell them that it's got a problem and they can do whatever they want with it. I don't know if they care anymore. So if we look at, so this was my setup. I just put my tripod and my antenna. I tried to eyeball where the center of the thing was down here, and
Cool.
I tried to line it up with. I think the rod is still where it's supposed to be. It's just that the part that's bent is no longer valid, and it also they claim you could also get altitude off this thing, but since it's been moved vertically, that won't tell you anything anymore. And then over here on the left, I've just got my plastic box of the GPS receiver and my Intrip client, which is that little ESP32 board. And on top, here's my cell modem hotspot, which is connected to the cell modem or connected to the cell network and is feeding Wi-Fi into the box in the bottom. So I just got my laptop, and here's the cable that runs across for the antenna. And I just fired up the software that comes with the U-block stuff. And here you can see that it's, let's see, I gotta zoom in on this, zip. So here it's saying that I've got a decent fix, and it says, here's where you are. I got two different altitudes here. I don't know what those actually mean. And this is the first time I've actually looked at the altitude to even see if I got anything there, but everything looks fairly good at that point. And here's the satellites it's tracking down here. I thought it would give me a number somewhere. I don't see that. Somewhere I think it'll tell me. And look at the ones over here. These are the Galileo satellites here that's looking at. And this is the Russian GLONASS satellites. And here's the United States GPS satellites. And that's all working. And here's my little blob. And I still haven't figured out if the 0.1 meters means that's the diameter of that circle or that's the radius of that circle. But whatever it is, that's holding a pretty nice little tight spot there.
And
down
now
here,
for the bottom line.
well, the bottom line is it's giving me these numbers. And when I was trying to do my calculations, I was taking these numbers here and tried to use that. But I think if I take this number, this is probably the average. So that also, if you click on the C here for centered, if I click on that, then it keeps the blob right on top of the center of this mass. So probably if I do that and look at this number, that's probably the average of all the whole thing. So that's probably a better number to use than what I had. So anyway, I got home and I just took these two last numbers and tried to run them through all that calculations I was pointing out on the Slack channel that I was trying to do this stuff. And it looks like to do latitude, you just simply take the latitude number here and multiply it by, there's some clever number they give you. No, actually, if you go look at the thing on the Slack channel, I was explaining that you pull up that one web page and it says, well, out to 7 decimal places, that's approximately 1.1 meters at that point. So I said, okay, out to 7 digits. I came out and I subtracted this and what they told me it's supposed to be at. And so I multiplied the 2.75 that I was getting by 1.1 meters, and it comes out to about 3 centimeters at that point. So I'm thinking that it's telling me that if I look at my setup here, it looks like I was like 0.3 centimeters further north than what it says it is. And the fact this is bent and I'm just trying to eyeball the alignment, and it's probably not level. You know, I'm just tickled with that. The fact that if it says I'm within 3 centimeters of some other pre-surveyed location, that's great. But if you want to do if you want to know the longitude, apparently longitude, I didn't realize that's how this worked. But they say at the equator, the longitude and the latitude are calculated the same way, but it's apparently like concentric circles that go up from there. So if you're so you draw a horizontal circle around the Earth, and if you're at the equator, then it's the same diameter as if you went around the other way. But as you start moving further north, the circles get smaller and smaller and smaller based on the latitude that you're at. So you have to do something like you have to say, take the cosine of the latitude and multiply that by something else. And I just didn't have the patience to do that. So I'm going to say it's probably close enough that my receiver is probably close enough to be usable without questioning it. And I didn't really need an absolute number anyway. I was just curious to how well it's working. So the combination of the correction data from the DOT and the placement of my antenna, over that predefined marker says, yes, it does a pretty decent job. And in reality, you're going to go out and say, mow your yard. You just want to say the next time and say next week when you come back, you want it to know you're starting in the right spot, and you don't really care the absolute position of that on the face of the Earth in the first place. So it would be interesting to compare this, say, pull up Google Earth and click on this spot, find it on the photo and click on the spot and see what they think it is. Because Google Earth isn't necessarily as accurate as you would like it to be, because they take all these photos and they stretch them and warp them and do all kinds of things. So it won't necessarily be exactly right. It's just this one, when they put this thing in, they surveyed it back in 2015, and I've got the report that I can pull up and look at, and it tells me exactly where they think it is, and I was happy that it was close at that point.
3 centimeters or 0.3 centimeters.
I believe it's 3 centimeters. So it's a little over an inch off at that point in that particular direction. And the other direction, I said I didn't go down all the calculations for that, so I don't know. So just as a test, I had this close to my house, and it tells me, yeah, it works. This setup works really well with the U-Blocks F9P and the DOT correction data, and through my little cell modem hotspot, it gives me reasonable results. And I don't know, I suppose if you find somewhere that's got a tree, I could just do that out in my own yard, just put a mark on the ground. Well, no, I can't, because I can't move the tree. So anyway, I'm not sure how much the trees, affect the thing, but anyway, just as an experiment, that's what I came up with. And I could find somewhere else in town, I can find a different marker. I only found the 2 markers. They had this one and, now I'm going to minimize them all. Then I got this one, I think is the other one. So here's another one it looks like it's right out in the open. Here's a sidewalk right along here. There's a parking lot over here. And this is the same kind of thing with here, I may have a picture of close up. Yeah, so again, it's just one of those caps. And see, it's not directly centered under it, but the same thing. But unfortunately now, somewhere over the years, they ran a fence right along here, a little short fence, about a 3-foot high fence, just so people don't walk from the sidewalk into the parking lot, apparently. And then after the George Floyd trial, they put up, they got like an 8-foot metal fence here now with big spikes on top of it. And the reason they did that, because the parking lot belongs to the firefighter and the police union, and that would have been a prime target during all these riots to attack the police. So they put this big fence all the way around to fence it in, and they got one of those security gates on it. So you have to drive up and punch in a code to open the thing, which basically means this is on the inside of a fence now that I can't get to. So it's, even though it looks like it's in perfect condition, I can see it through the fence, but I can't get to it now. So I probably won't use that one. And if you look far enough there, apparently they have these discs stuck into, when they build a new bridge, they put a disc into the concrete. So theoretically, I could just find, if I can find one that's where I can get to it, I could go measure it and get, a closer reference to what I got. But at the moment, if I can get within 3 centimeters, that keeps me happy, because people keep saying, well, how accurate is it? How do you know? Well, I went out and I measured one. It looks pretty close, so that's good enough for me.
I think that's awesome.
So then moving on to other things. This is my on the front of my robot. I've got this plastic plate, and there's three separate IMUs bolted down to it. And the one on the right here is the BNO055. And the one on the left was my new BNO085. And I thought, hey, I've got another one laying around. So this one, this is actually that EM7180 chip that everybody was buying on Tindy. I simply unplugged that. And here's my second BNO85. I just got the wires plugged into that Teensy. So I've got 3 separate IMUs on this thing. And still, the BNO055 is working the best, and it's working without using any correction data on it. So it says the correction data is 0, the correction status is 0, yet it's giving me the best results of any of those. And I can't get the 2 of the BNO085s to give me decent results yet. And one other thing I just did while I was tearing everything apart, because I had to tear my robot apart to get the GPS antenna and the F9P receiver box and all that stuff out. Well, I teared it apart right here. I do have a steel bolt stuck right there that holds. There's a wood piece across here, and then this gray wood piece here that everything's bolted down to. I have a single steel bolt through there. It's like a 3-inch bolt and a steel nut and some steel washers for spacers in there. So I thought, well, I'll replace that with a nylon, because here's I use nylon bolts to hold this down. So nylon bolts there, and these are nylon screws that I used. And something else I'll get to in a second here about mounting. So I was going to replace this with a nylon bolt, but I went to the hardware store and they don't have ones that long. So I ended up buying a brass bolt. So I got a brass bolt that's 3 inches long, a brass nut. I bought some nylon washers for spacers. So I got all that put back together. So if the fact that steel is screwing up here's my 2 BNO085 receiver or IMUs on the left. If that's screwing it up, well, that's one less thing that I'll have to worry about. Because what I find odd is if I sit in my house, sit in my lazy boy in front of my TV, and I've got my Windows laptop plugged into one of these boards, and I say fired up, it'll say, yep, it's calibrated. And sure enough, it looks like it's working quite well. But if I take it outside with it bolted on the robot, I can't get it to calibrate. It says I'm off by 20 or 30 degrees or something when all is said and done. So I don't know if it's because of this bolt stuck on there, which it seems if that's a problem, it should be screwing up the BNO055, and it doesn't seem to be. So I don't know what is wrong. I could just take it out in the front yard and take it off the robot, and with it not being close to anything, see if I can get it to calibrate that way, and then just simply move it back onto the robot. Does that screw up the heading? So it's more experimentation I got to do there on that kind of stuff.
I will tell you, the accuracy status I get when I first start up is 0. And it doesn't, I have to move it around to get the accuracy status to be 3.
Yep. Do you have to move it a lot or just kind of nudge it a little bit?
Well, I haven't tested it a lot, but 10 seconds of moving it around.
Okay. I noticed I think when I had it in the house and it would come back up calibrated, I think as soon as I started it, it would either say immediately give me a calibration status of 3, or I just have to wiggle it just a little bit for that to work. And so in the house, it seemed to be happy, but out in the yard, I can't get it to work. And then also on my BNO055, when I was doing the calibration on that, I'd go through and do all the calibration. I have to read the values out and store them locally in the EEPROM of the Teensy here. So then next time you start up, you can read those values and load them into the chip. And that seemed to be, I think it may have been immediately coming up with a calibration status of 3, or I just simply had to wiggle it just a little bit, just so it could just see any small amount of movement, and then it would lock on and say it had a calibration status of 3. Now I gave up on that one because once I get it on the vehicle, it seems like, I can load the values in, but as soon as I start driving around, then the calibration level starts dropping. And I finally decided that since I can run it without loading any calibration data into it and just simply turn it on and drive around the block, and it's tracking almost as close as my GPS heading, I decided, if I don't touch it, that seems to be working fairly well, but I can't get the BNO085s to do anything like I want them to do.
Hmm. Yeah, so I mean, you've got more experience with it than I do, actual and moving it around. But yeah, I've noticed mine basically is physically pointed at 180 degrees, and starts up, 183, 190, 195. With the status of 0. That's
So I guess basically it's just a matter of more playing around with that to see what we can make them do. And I was curious, once you get what yours running, if you drive around, say driving a square, does it give you,
better data.
does it tell you the actual heading you're going, or when I first started off with the BNO085, I drive around and going north, it said, okay, it's lining up. As soon as I started turning going west, it seemed to be off some amount. And when I turned to go south, it was off even more. So it seemed like it was creeping on me. In fact, some of the time just watching, you could see it, watching the slope on the thing. Let's see, stop sharing. And get these out of the way again. And basically, as I drive around, the line would say it's going this way, and then I turn, and it's supposed to be drawing a straight line like this, but it number one, it would be offset some amount. Plus, it seemed to be sloping too as I would drive, and I don't know what was causing that. But now it just seems to have mysteriously fixed itself, where with no calibration at all on the BNO055, it's basically tracking the GPS one. So I'm fairly happy with that. And on another note, on the BNO055, I see Adafruit just sent me a notice saying they've got their BNO055 back in stock, the $20 one. So it's like the BNO085 with those quick connectors. And I may get one of those just simply because I'm afraid to hack on the one I've got. The one I've got is working so well that I don't want to hack it up too bad. And I wanted to try that UART interface onto that and see what that's going to do. But again, I don't want to start soldering on this other board that I've got that seems to be it's the best one I've got at this point. So I might consider getting another one of those just to play with.
I thought you thought that creeping was due to like crabbing, the wheels crabbing to go straight on the slope.
Well, that's something totally different. That was the wheel odometry, that's a totally separate issue here.
No.
Because otherwise, right now I'm just looking at the IMU and I'm looking at the GPS heading, and those shouldn't have anything to do with the slope. I guess they will a little bit, because if it's slow a little bit, say to the left, that my GPS moves over a little bit to the left, but that may or may not be a problem. But no, that's not the problem I was having originally with the IMU. It was actually it seemed to be creeping, or there's some kind of a slope to it. No, that had nothing to do with the odometry stuff. So the other thing I wanted to point out was, let's move everything back again, and share screen. Come on, here we go. This one. So another problem you have. See on my 3 protoboards I got stuck on here. I've actually got the protoboard stuck down to a piece of plastic, and then I have the plastic screwed down.
I saw those.
And the reason for that. What's that?
I said I noticed those nylon screws into the acrylic or plexiglass, whatever that is.
Yeah, but the protoboard is actually stuck to a piece of black plastic in between there, and here's the reason why. Let's see, I gotta get everything out of the way again. I need about 6 screens, I think. Oh, that'd probably be even worse. So anyway, you get the protoboards, and they just have on the back, they got this adhesive. You can peel it off and stick them down to something. So as long as you're willing to treat that as a disposable device, you can do that. So if I stick the protoboards down to my plastic and then decide I want to do something else, or I want to just throw that in the trash, then that'll work out. But if you want them to be reusable, I realize what you can do is, here I cut this piece of black plastic, and then what I do, you pull the stuff off the back of that, and you can stick it down onto the plastic like that. And then if I drill a hole on both ends, I can now screw that down to the whatever I want to do it on. So when you're done, you just go screws off, you can take this off again. Because if you got this stuck down, you try to peel it up, this adhesive layer separates and pulls part of the pins out, and it's just a mess trying to do that. So it just simply makes it reusable if you've got it stuck down to a piece of plastic like that. So now you can just bolt the plastic down, and when you're done, and take the screws out, and it's reusable then again at that point. So here's one of the smaller boards. And it turns out these little tiny ones actually have holes in. And if you look around far enough, you can find ones that have holes drilled through them. So you can actually put a screw down through that. So it's still got the adhesive on the back, but if you use those holes, you have to drill through the adhesive because they just put it right over the top. But you can screw that down to whatever you want. And I could either use nylon screws. If I'm doing IMUs, I'd use the nylon screws. Otherwise, if you're just putting this down to whatever, you can use metal screws. You don't really care, but you still have the option. So here's another, again, a piece of plastic, stick it to a piece of plastic, and then again, bolt the plastic down to whatever you want. So that's just a handy thing if you want to make this stuff reusable. My background screwed up now. Oh, there we go.
Sure. Can you hold up your other proto board? It had like a greenish tint to it.
Oh, it's probably because of my background.
Or it's like clear. Is that clear?
Yep.
Or is it?
This one actually is clear. And I don't know why they did that, but it was they just molded it out of clear plastic just to be cute, I think. So you can so if you've never seen inside one, you can see inside of the thing and see the actual little clips in there. But that just simply the time I bought it, they came clear, and so I got 2 or 3 of those like that.
I had never seen a clear one like that. I was like, what is that?
I should have mentioned that because I didn't realize, the video might screw up things. So everybody goes, what the heck? Just like you say, what the heck? That looks like it's clear. Well, turns out it really is.
It's like fascinating.
It's like when you hold up something green, and it, because of my background, screws up, and you can see right through it.
Yeah, it does.
So anyway,
it does. It shows up translucent.
So I was trying to think if I had anything else I was doing, but I haven't really. Oh, one other thing that came up. So after I went to all the trouble to figure out the calculations for my wheel odometry, I showed that one that it looked like a clover leaf pattern driving around, and it should have been 2 overlapping rectangles. And then I went to Excel and calculated, the way it should be. And I put all those numbers in. Actually, the first time I went out to test it, I drove around and thought, well, gee, I should have put the new numbers in, and I should have checked the air pressure, and I didn't. So after about the 3rd time, I thought, I'm going to do that. So I went and got my computer and put in the numbers that, in fact, I decided to get the numbers to go straight. I pulled up one of my plots. I pulled up the plot when I had 30 PSI in both back tires. So that's my reference. And I said, okay, starting at 0, at one corner, and I went 80 meters straight up the sidewalk. And at that point, I took those 2 numbers and divided them out to get my ratio between my left and my right tire. And that's the number I put in. So I got like a number like 6 or 8 decimal points long that I put in for that, thinking that's going to really fix me up. And then for the rotations, I think I just went back to my Excel spreadsheet and said, okay, I put in the distance between the 2 back wheels of like 0.5 meters. And I played with that up and down, but that seemed to be working. So I put all that in and went out and drove it. And when I pulled up the plot and looked at it again, it's still not a rectangle, but I didn't check my tire pressure that time. So the next test will be with the new numbers put in there. They're supposed to be calibrated for 30 PSI in both tires. If I go check the tire pressure and make sure it's right, then I'll know if that's going to, if that theory is correct, that once I get everything, get the tires to the correct pressure and the right numbers, that it will be repeatable a week later if I have, again, the same tire pressure. But I won't know that until I actually go out and try it, I guess.
Cool.
And of course, the bottom line is you can't rely on odometry for long distance anyway, even though I keep trying to tweak that and get it right. In reality, you don't care anyway, because you just want to go see if you're if you're feeding that into your Kalman filter and saying, what's my current speed and my current heading. It just needs to know within every couple inches or so, it's reading that back in and feeding that into the mathematical equation. So that's what you really need. It just seems like the closer I can get that adjusted, just the better off everything would be. So I'll have to, when I get that far, that's one of the next things I should do And then it also comes back to this whole steering and angles and all this stuff. And I'm thinking that, you know, my wheel odometry, my back wheel odometry, which is essentially differential drive wheel odometry, you know, I've got all the calculations. I can pull it up in Excel and tweak that and get a nice looking plot on the ground. Now, it turns out if I would go ahead and calculate my Ackerman wheel odometry, so that's going to take the distance / speed from the back wheels and take the heading from the steering. So if I measure the steering coming back out of my giant RC servo, by merging those two together, I should be able to come up with the same type of odometry, but doing it a different way. And it's going to be interesting to see how close I can get that adjusted. And right now, I just did that quick hack to, I connected my giant RC servo to a Arduino Mini, or no, an Arduino Nano board. So it's got the 5-volt ADD converter, and it's only a 10-bit ADD converter, but it does indeed show me the actual heading that my RC servo is set at. It doesn't take into account any of the slop in my mechanical stuff, but that does give me a number back out. So theoretically, I can take that number and feed it through the equations to say, you know, if I'm driving like this and going straight, it should, you know, my XY should plot you know, a straight line as I go, and then if the steering is turned so much, then it's going to drive in a circle, and I should be able to recover all that. So there's two different things telling me, you know, recovering the information. And say if I drive in a circle, I should be able to say, okay, if I drive in a circle, I should be able to tweak both of those. So both types of odometry line up and show me that circle, plus the fact, then I'm at the point where I can say, okay, I have to feed in a steering angle. And because you want to feed in a steering angle, says, give me say a 3-foot diameter circle, and then taking the odometry, number one, I can say, is it actually driving in a 3-foot circle? I can get that off the wheel odometry, plus I can get that off the GPS. So all of this stuff should be interrelated. It's just a matter of figuring out, you know, say, okay, I've got it figured out. Now here's the steps that somebody can look at and say, you know, this is how these things tie together.
Yeah.
And that's something I need to do.
I've got to scoot, but that I'm hoping to be with you there and having somebody explain that whole move base flex calculation. So anyway, good luck. I'll post my odd error messages, well, lack of error messages, but why it's just seeming collapse. But I think I have a hardware problem, and any advice you have, I would appreciate it.
Yeah, just the last, you know, there's just going to be 2 or 3 lines there. You'll start up your launch file and it says everybody's happy, and then all of a sudden, you know, several seconds or several minutes later, it's going to say, bam, here's an error message. And then usually everything after that is just the ROS trying to shut down. So most of that comes afterwards isn't really all that useful. But if you can find the first line, if you can find the last good line after you start your launch file, and then copy the rest of the stuff on down until it comes back to a command prompt, then there's no question about, you know, well, did you include this? That'll be everything that happened as it shut down. So that'd be worth looking at.
Good deal. Well, we'll see you on Slack the next couple of days.
Okay.
See you, Jeff.
Okay, bye.